The mansion gates opened, and the bank arrived to take everything. The Mafia boss stood powerless until the maid he'd fired 3 months ago stepped out of a taxi with a check that could save him. But the money came with a price neither of them expected. The iron gates of the DeSantis mansion swung open at exactly 9:47 a.m., but not for the usual deliveries of Italian wine or fresh flowers. 3 black SUVs rolled up the circular driveway, followed by an armored vehicle with First National Bank Asset Recovery stenciled on its side. Marco DeSantis stood at his office window on the second floor, watching them arrive like vultures circling a dying animal. His reflection in the glass showed a man who'd built his reputation on never flinching, never showing weakness. Today, for the first time in 17 years, that reputation was about to crack. "Boss, they've got court orders." Vinny Russo appeared in the doorway, his phone pressed against his chest. "Every account is frozen. The feds worked with the bank's fraud division. They're calling it a RICO asset seizure." Marco didn't turn around. Below, men in dark suits were stepping out of their vehicles, carrying briefcases and tablets. One of them, a balding man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses, looked up directly at Marco's window. The message was clear. "We're taking everything." "How much time do we have?" Marco's voice was steady, though his jaw tightened. "They're serving the eviction notice now. We've got 72 hours to vacate," but Vinny hesitated. "The mansion's debt is $82 million. With all accounts frozen, we can't touch a dime. Even if we could move offshore money, it'd take weeks to clean it enough for them to accept it." Marco finally turned from the window. At 45, he still carried the same lean, dangerous energy that had made him feared throughout the East Coast. But today, something was different in his eyes. Not fear. Marco DeSantis didn't do fear. It was something worse. Helplessness. "Get everyone out of the house," he said quietly. "I don't want my people here when they start cataloging assets." "What about you?" "I'll handle the bank's vultures myself." Vinny nodded and disappeared. Marco could hear him barking orders down the hallway, his heavy footsteps echoing through the mansion that had been in the DeSantis family for 3 generations. His grandfather had built this place with blood money from bootlegging during Prohibition. His father had defended it through 2 gang wars. And now Marco was going to lose it to men with briefcases and legal documents. He straightened his tie, preparing to go downstairs and face the inevitable with whatever dignity he had left. That's when he heard the commotion at the gate. Through the window, Marco saw a yellow taxi pull up behind the bank's convoy. A woman stepped out, wearing a simple blue dress and carrying a worn leather messenger bag. She was saying something to the security guard at the gate, gesturing toward the house. Marco's breath caught in his chest. Lena Moretti. The maid he'd fired 3 months ago without explanation, without severance, without even the courtesy of a real goodbye. He just had Vinny hand her an envelope with 2 weeks' pay and tell her not to come back. She'd looked stunned, hurt, but she'd left without arguing. Now she was back, and she was pushing past the guard, walking straight toward the bank officials who were setting up their mobile command station on his front lawn. "What the hell?" Marco muttered, then bolted for the door. By the time he reached the front steps, Lena was standing face-to-face with a balding man in wire-rimmed glasses, Jonathan Pierce, according to the ID badge hanging from his neck. Pierce looked annoyed at the interruption. "Ma'am, this is an official bank seizure operation. You need to leave the premises immediately." "I'm not leaving," Lena said, her voice calm but firm. "I'm here to settle the debt."
Pierce blinked.
"Excuse me?" "The mansion's debt. $82 million. I'm here to pay it." The entire scene seemed to freeze. Pierce stared at her. 2 security guards exchanged confused glances. And Marco, halfway down the steps, stopped moving entirely. Lena turned and looked directly at him for the first time. Her dark eyes were unreadable, but there was something in them that made Marco's stomach twist. Not anger, not resentment. Something far more complicated. "You," Marco started, then couldn't find the words. "You can't be serious." "I have a certified bank check," Lena said, reaching into her messenger bag. She pulled out a folder and handed it to Pierce. Legal inheritance from my father's estate. Released from probate 2 months ago. The funds are clean, no criminal ties. Verified by 3 law firms. Pierce opened the folder, his expression shifting from annoyance to shock as he examined the documents. His hands were actually shaking slightly as he pulled out his phone and stepped away, speaking in urgent, hushed tones. Vinny appeared at Marco's elbow. "Boss, what the hell is happening?" "I have no idea," Marco said quietly, never taking his eyes off Lena. She stood there on his lawn, surrounded by bank officials and security personnel, looking small and ordinary and completely out of place. She'd been invisible to him for 2 years, just the woman who cleaned his office, brought his coffee, changed his sheets. He'd never asked her about her life, her family, her dreams. She'd been furniture, a function, not a person. Until the day he'd found his private safe open, just a crack, but open. Nothing missing, but the security breach was unacceptable. He'd assumed she'd been snooping, maybe working for the feds or a rival family. So he'd cut her loose without a second thought. Now she was here, offering to give him $82 million. Pierce returned, his face pale. "Mr. DeSantis, it appears the funds are legitimate. If Miss Moretti wishes to settle your debt, she has the legal right to do so." He paused, looking between them with obvious confusion. "Though I must say, this is highly unusual." "Unusual," Marco repeated, the word tasting bitter in his mouth. He walked down the remaining steps until he was standing directly in front of Lena. Up close, he could see she'd lost weight since he'd fired her. There were shadows under her eyes. "Why?" "Why what?" she asked. "Why would you do this? I fired you. I gave you no explanation, no reference, nothing. For all you know, I'm the worst person you've ever worked for." His voice dropped lower. "So, why the hell are you standing on my lawn trying to save my house?" Lena met his gaze steadily. "Because you saved my brother." Marco's jaw tightened. He remembered that night 18 months ago, a drive-by, bullets meant for him but spraying wildly. A young man had been walking past the gate, wrong place at the absolute worst time. Marco had reacted on instinct, tackling the kid behind a stone pillar. 3 bullets had hit the wall where the kid's head had been a second before. That was Marco started, then stopped. He wanted to say it was nothing, just instinct, meaningless. But looking at Lena's face, he realized it wasn't meaningless to her. "That was your brother?" "Dante," she said quietly. "He was coming to pick me up after my shift. You didn't just save him that night, Mr. DeSantis. You gave him a future. He graduated law school last month because you pulled him out of the line of fire." Pierce cleared his throat awkwardly. "If we're proceeding with this payment, I need both parties to come to the bank's regional office to complete the paperwork. This will take several hours." But Marco wasn't listening to Pierce anymore. He was staring at Lena, this woman he'd treated as invisible, who'd just walked back into his life with a check that would save everything he had left. And something in his chest, something he'd thought died years ago, twisted painfully. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Before you do this, we need to talk." Lena shook her head. "There's nothing to talk about. I'm paying the debt. That's all." "It's not all," Marco insisted. "Lena." "Mr. DeSantis." Vinny's shout cut through the moment. He was running toward them from the house, his face pale. "We've got a problem." Words already leaked about where the inheritance came from. Marco's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Vinny glanced at Lena, then back at Marco. "Her father, Tony Moretti, he used to be the accountant for the Castellano family. Marco, she's got blood money from our biggest rival, and everyone's about to know she just used it to save your mansion." The weight of those words settled over the scene like a bomb blast. Pierce stepped back nervously. The security guards suddenly looked very alert, hands drifting toward their concealed weapons. And Lena just stood there, her expression never changing, as if she'd known this moment was coming all along. "Get inside," Marco said quietly. "Both of you. Now." Because in that moment, Marco realized 3 things simultaneously. First, Lena had just made herself a target. Second, She'd known it would happen and came anyway. And third, the woman he dismissed as invisible 3 months ago might be the bravest, or most foolish, person he'd ever met. And now both their lives depended on figuring out which one she really was. 3 months earlier, the afternoon sun poured through the windows of Marco's private office as Lena pushed the cleaning cart down the hallway. It was Tuesday, her day to deep clean the East Wing, including Marco's personal quarters. She'd been doing this same routine for 2 years, every Tuesday at 2 p.m. when Marco was always in meetings downtown. Except today, Marco had come home early. Lena was dusting the bookshelf behind his desk when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, purposeful. She turned just as Marco walked through the door, Vinny right behind him. Marco stopped cold when he saw her. His eyes went immediately to his desk, then to the antique painting on the wall, the one that concealed his private safe. The painting was slightly crooked. Lena's heart sank. She'd noticed it was tilted while cleaning and had straightened it, nothing more. But the look on Marco's face told her he didn't see it that way. "Mr. DeSantis, I was just out." His voice was cold, flat. Not angry, somehow worse than angry. Emotionless. "Sir, I didn't touch anything. The painting was crooked, so I—" "Vinny, get her out of this room. Now." Vinny moved forward, not roughly but firmly, taking Lena by the elbow. "Come on. Let's go." "Please, Mr. DeSantis, I would never." Lena tried to pull away from Vinny, desperate to explain. She'd worked so hard to keep this job. The pay was good, better than anything else she could get without a college degree. It paid for Dante's law school books, his apartment near campus, everything. Marco walked to the painting and checked behind it. The safe was closed, the combination lock undisturbed. Nothing was missing, but his jaw was tight, his shoulders rigid with tension. 2 years, Marco said quietly, still facing the wall. 2 years you've been in my house, in my private spaces. And I don't know a damn thing about you, do I? Sir. Who do you work for? He turned to face her, and for the first time since she'd started working there, he really looked at her. Not through her, not past her, at her. The feds? Castellano? Who sent you? The accusation hit Lena like a slap. Nobody sent me. I'm a housekeeper. That's all I am. That's all you are, Marco repeated, something bitter in his voice. You expect me to believe you just happened to get a job here? That you just happened to be cleaning my office today when I keep my schedule private? I clean your office every Tuesday at 2, Lena said, her voice shaking now. I've done it for 2 years. You've never been here because you're always in meetings. Today you came back early. That's all. This is bad timing. Marco studied her face for a long moment. Lena could see him weighing her words, searching for deception. She held his gaze, willing him to see the truth. Finally, he looked at Vinny. Pay her through the end of the month. She's done here. What? Lena's voice cracked. Mr. DeSantis, please. 2-week severance, Marco continued as if she hadn't spoken. No reference letter. And Vinny, make sure she understands. If I find out she's been talking to anyone about what she's seen in this house, we'll have a problem. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. I never saw anything, she said quietly. I cleaned your house. That's all I ever did. Something flickered across Marco's face. Doubt, maybe, or regret, but it was gone before Lena could be sure. He turned back to the window, dismissing her with his silence. Vinny led her out of the office, down the stairs, to the service entrance where she'd arrived every morning for 2 years. He pulled an envelope from his jacket, crisp hundreds, already counted and prepared. Marco had made this decision before even coming into the office. He'd seen the crooked painting on his security cameras and decided her fate before giving her a chance to explain. Nothing personal, Vinny said as he handed her the money. Boss can't take chances. You understand. Lena took the envelope, her hands steady despite everything. Tell me something, Vinny. That night 18 months ago, when those bullets came through the gate and Mr. DeSantis saved that kid, the one who was waiting for me, did he know that boy was my brother? Vinny's expression shifted. You're Dante's sister? Did he know? Lena pressed. No, Vinny said after a moment. He just reacted. Pulled the kid to safety. Didn't even ask his name afterward. Lena nodded slowly, something settling in her chest. Marco DeSantis had saved her brother without knowing who he was, without expecting anything in return. He'd risked his own life for a stranger simply because it was the right thing to do in that moment. And now he was throwing her out without even listening to her side of the story. There's a car waiting to take you home, Vinny said, uncomfortable with her silence. Lena shook her head. I'll walk. She left through the service gate, the same way she'd entered every morning for 2 years. As she walked down the tree-lined drive, she pulled her phone from her pocket to call Dante, to tell him she'd lost her job and they'd need to figure out rent another way. That's when she saw it, wedged in her bag between her water bottle and spare cleaning gloves. A white envelope, slightly crumpled, with her name written in elegant script. Lena Moretti, care of Morrison and Associates Law Firm Re, estate of Anthony Joseph Moretti. Her hands trembled as she stared at the return address. Morrison and Associates was a high-end firm in downtown Boston, the kind of place that didn't handle small matters. And Anthony Joseph Moretti was her father, the man who'd left when she was 7 years old, disappearing into a life she'd never understood and he'd never explained. She'd assumed he was dead, or worse, that he simply didn't care enough to stay in touch. The letter was dated 3 weeks ago. It had been sitting in her bag, unopened, while she'd scrubbed floors and dusted bookshelves, completely unaware that her entire life was about to change. Lena looked back at the mansion one last time. Marco DeSantis stood in his office window, a silhouette against the afternoon light, watching her leave. She turned away and kept walking, the unopened letter burning against her palm like a promise or a curse. She wouldn't know which until she tore it open. But either way, she understood one thing with perfect clarity. Marco DeSantis had just made the biggest mistake of his life by letting her go. The law offices of Morrison and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower overlooking Boston Harbor. Lena had never been in a building this expensive before. The elevator had actual marble walls, and the receptionist wore a suit that probably cost more than Lena's entire month's rent. Miss Moretti? A woman in her mid-40s approached with an outstretched hand.
I'm Patricia Morrison.
Thank you for coming in. I know this must be overwhelming. Overwhelming didn't begin to cover it. After reading the letter 3 times on her apartment floor, Lena had called the number listed. The woman who answered had been kind but firm. Miss Moretti, this matter requires an in-person meeting. How soon can you come to our office? Now, sitting in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows, Lena felt completely out of place in her department store dress and worn flats. Patricia slid a folder across the polished table. Your father, Anthony Moretti, passed away 4 months ago. Heart attack. He was 63. Lena's throat tightened. She'd spent 25 years angry at the man who'd abandoned her and her mother. Now he was dead, and she'd never get answers to the questions that had haunted her childhood. Why didn't anyone tell me? She asked quietly. Your father's instructions were very specific. You were only to be contacted after the estate cleared probate and all legal challenges were resolved. Patricia opened the folder. Miss Moretti, your father left you everything. His entire estate, liquidated and placed in a secure trust. Lena stared at the number on the document. She read it 3 times, certain she was misunderstanding. $87 million. That can't be right. It's correct, Patricia said gently. Your father was a very successful financial consultant. He specialized in helping businesses, legitimate businesses, manage their assets and navigate complex tax situations. The way Patricia emphasized legitimate made Lena's stomach twist. But he worked for criminals, didn't he? Patricia's expression didn't change. Your father spent 15 years as the accountant for the Castellano crime family. That's a matter of public record. He testified against them in 1998 as part of a plea agreement. He received immunity in exchange for his cooperation. Lena felt like the floor was tilting. He was a mob accountant. Was Patricia stressed? After his testimony, he entered witness protection briefly, then rebuilt his life under his own name. He used his knowledge of financial systems to build a legitimate consulting business. Every dollar in that trust has been vetted by 3 different law firms, the IRS and the FBI. It's clean money, Miss Moretti. Legally obtained, legally taxed, legally yours. Lena's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. Why would he leave this to me? He left when I was 7. I haven't heard from him in 25 years. Patricia reached across the table and pulled out a sealed envelope. He left you this. I was instructed to give it to you only after you'd been informed of the inheritance. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive paper. Lena's name was written on it in her father's handwriting. She recognized it from the single birthday card he'd sent when she was 8, the last thing she'd ever received from him. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Lena, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you know what I was. I won't insult you with excuses. I left to keep you safe. The Castellanos would have used you and your mother against me if they'd known you existed. After I testified, I wanted to come back, but by then you were better off without me. A mob accountant, even a reformed one, doesn't make a good father. I built this money legally because I wanted to give you something clean. Something that wouldn't poison your life the way mine was poisoned. Use it however you want. To build a future, to help your brother, yes, I kept track from a distance, to finally live without struggling. But be careful, Lena. The Castellano family is mostly gone now, but their enemies remember me. If word gets out about where this money came from, some people might assume it's hidden Castellano assets. They'll come looking. Keep this quiet if you can. I'm sorry I couldn't be the father you deserved, but maybe this can give you the life you deserve. Tony. Lena read the letter twice, tears blurring the words. Anger and grief tangled in her chest, impossible to separate. He kept track of me, she whispered. He hired a private investigator, Patricia confirmed, just to make sure you and your brother were safe. He never interfered, never made contact. But he knew about Dante's law school, your job at, she paused, checking her notes. The DeSantis residence. Lena's head snapped up. He knew I worked for Marco DeSantis. Patricia's expression shifted, becoming more cautious. Yes. In fact, that was one of the reasons he finalized his will when he did. He was concerned about you working in that environment. Why? Marco never. Lena stopped herself. Marco had fired her. But before that, he'd never been cruel. Distant, yes. Cold, absolutely. But never dangerous to her personally. Miss Moretti, Marco DeSantis, and the Castellano family have been at war for territory for over a decade. Your father's testimony is part of what weakened the Castellanos enough for DeSantis to expand his operations, Patricia leaned forward. If Marco DeSantis ever found out you were Tony Moretti's daughter, he would have seen you as either a spy or a leverage. Your father wanted you to have the means to walk away from that job if it ever became dangerous. The irony was almost laughable. Marco had fired her for being a suspected spy, never knowing she actually was connected to his enemies, just not in the way he'd imagined. What do I need to do? Lena asked, her voice steadier now. To access the money, sign these documents. We'll set up a direct transfer to your bank account, or we can issue certified checks for specific purposes. The money is yours immediately. Lena stared at the papers, her father's letter still clutched in her other hand. $8.7 million. Enough to never work again. Enough to pay off Dante's student loans and buy him a car. Enough to travel, to go to college herself, to build any life she wanted. Enough to save a mansion belonging to the man who'd thrown her out without even listening to her explanation. She thought about that night 18 months ago. Dante on the ground, Marco's body shielding him from bullets. The way Marco had stayed there until the shooting stopped, asking, "You hurt, kid?" with genuine concern in his voice. Marco DeSantis had saved her brother without knowing who he was, without asking for anything in return. He'd acted on instinct, on some buried sense of decency that Lena suspected he'd tried hard to kill but couldn't quite destroy. And now he was about to lose everything. "Can you prepare a certified check?" Lena heard herself ask. "For $82 million? Patricia blinked. "That's very specific. May I ask what for?" "I'm settling a debt," Lena said quietly. And she was. Not Marco's debt to the bank, Marco's debt to her brother's life. A debt he didn't even know he owed, being repaid by a woman he dismissed as invisible. Her father had wanted her to use this money to escape danger. Instead, Lena was about to walk straight into the fire. Lena's apartment was a fourth-floor walk-up in Dorchester, the kind of place where the radiator clanked all winter and the neighbors' arguments bled through the walls. She sat on her worn couch, the certified check for $82 million on the coffee table in front of her, next to a half-eaten container of Chinese takeout. The check had been in her possession for 2 weeks now. 2 weeks of staring at it, second-guessing herself, wondering if she'd lost her mind. Dante sat across from her, his law textbooks spread across the floor. He'd been studying for the bar exam, but for the past 20 minutes, he'd been watching his sister with increasing concern. "You're going to burn a hole in it if you keep staring like that," he said finally. Lena looked up. "I think I'm making a mistake." "Then don't do it," Dante closed his book. "Lena, you don't owe Marco DeSantis anything. Yeah, he pulled me out of the line of fire that night, but he's also a criminal who fired you without cause. You owe him nothing. He saved your life, and you're about to give him $8 million. I'd say that more than settles the score." Dante leaned forward. "This money could change everything for us. You could go back to school. We could get Mom's grave a proper headstone. Hell, you could travel, see the world, do all the things you've put off while working 2 jobs to keep me in law school." Lena knew he was right. The logical choice was obvious. But every time she tried to convince herself to keep the money, she remembered that night. She'd been finishing her shift, gathering her things from the service entrance, when she heard the gunshots. The sound had frozen her blood, sharp cracks echoing through the evening air, followed by shouting and the screech of tires. She'd run toward the gate, her heart hammering, because Dante was supposed to be there, waiting to give her a ride home. His beat-up Honda was parked right outside the entrance. When she reached the scene, Marco had been crouched behind a stone pillar, his body covering someone on the ground. Security was returning fire at a black SUV speeding away. And beneath Marco, wide-eyed and shaking but alive, was Dante. Marco had pulled himself up, checked Dante for injuries with surprisingly gentle hands, then said, "You hurt, kid?" Dante had shaken his head, too shocked to speak. "Then get the hell out of here before they come back." Marco hadn't asked his name, hadn't waited for thanks. He'd just stood and walked back toward the mansion, brushing stone dust off his suit jacket like he'd done nothing more significant than hold a door open. But Lena had seen the bullet holes in the wall, 3 of them, exactly where Dante's head had been before Marco tackled him down. "I watched the news today," Lena said quietly. "The feds are closing in on him. They've frozen everything. His people are abandoning him. The bank is going to take that mansion, and then, Dante, everything his family built will be gone." "And that matters to you, why?" Dante asked, though his voice had softened. He knew his sister. Knew that once she made up her mind about something being right or wrong, there was no talking her out of it. Lena picked up the remote and turned on the TV. She'd recorded the local news from earlier that day. The segment showed Marco's mansion surrounded by bank vehicles, reporters crowding the gates, helicopter footage of the sprawling estate. "Sources confirm that the DeSantis organization has been effectively dismantled," the reporter was saying. "With all assets frozen and multiple indictments pending, legal experts say Marco DeSantis could lose everything, including the family mansion that's been in the DeSantis family for 3 generations. The camera zoomed in on Marco standing at his front steps, surrounded by lawyers and bank officials. Even from a distance, even on a TV screen, Lena could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set. He looked like a man watching his entire world collapse. "He's a criminal, Lena," Dante said, but there was less conviction in his voice now. "People like him. They make choices that lead to moments like this." "I know what he is," Lena replied. "I worked in his house for 2 years. I've cleaned blood off his office floor. I've seen the men who visit him at night, the packages that arrive unmarked. I'm not naive about who Marco DeSantis is." "Then why?" Lena was quiet for a long moment. "Because in 2 years of working for him, I saw something else too. I saw him pay for his driver's daughter's cancer treatment, anonymously, through a charity fund that didn't exist before she got sick. I saw him destroy a man who tried to sell drugs near a middle school on his territory. I saw him at his desk at 3 in the morning, looking at photos of his parents, and I saw something in his face that looked almost human." She turned to face her brother. "Marco DeSantis is a criminal, but he's not a monster." And that night, he didn't hesitate. He didn't calculate the risk or think about whether saving you would benefit him. He just moved, like it was the most natural thing in the world to put his body between a stranger and bullets meant for him. Dante ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "You're really going to do this?" "I think I have to, even though it might be dangerous." "Patricia Morrison warned you. If people find out that money came from your father, the accountant who helped destroy the Castellano family, they're going to assume it's hidden cartel money. They might come after you." "I know. And Marco fired you. He didn't trust you. He threw you out without even listening." "I know that too." Dante stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "Mom would say you're being stupid. Mom would say I'm paying back a life debt. Mom's been gone for 10 years, Lena. You don't have to live by her old world rules." But Lena did. Her mother had been a first-generation immigrant who'd worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. She'd taught Lena that debts mattered, not money debts, but the deeper kind. The kind that tied people together across years and circumstances. "You saved my child's life. I owe you everything." It was simple, ancient, absolute. Dante turned back from the window. "If you're going to do this, at least wait. Watch how it plays out. Maybe the feds will give him a deal. Maybe someone else will step up." "I've been waiting for 2 weeks," Lena said. "The bank takes the mansion in 3 days. After that, it won't matter." She picked up the check, feeling its weight. Not the physical weight of paper, but the weight of the choice it represented. This single piece of paper could buy her freedom or chain her to consequences she couldn't yet imagine. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. DeSantis mansion seizure confirmed for Friday morning. 3 days. Lena stood up, folding the check carefully and putting it in her purse. "I'm going tomorrow morning. I'll be there when the bank arrives." "Lena." "I have to do this, Dante. Not for him. For me. Because if I don't, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I'm the kind of person who turns her back when she has the power to help." Dante looked at his sister for a long moment, then sighed. "You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. I learned from the best," Lena said with a small smile. "Mom was way more stubborn than me." "Fair point." Dante pulled her into a hug. "Just be careful, okay? These people don't play by normal rules." "I know." But as Lena held her brother, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the heart that was still beating because of Marco DeSantis, she realized she'd already made her choice. Tomorrow, she'd walk back into Marco's life. And whatever came next, she'd face it knowing she'd honored a debt that mattered more than money ever could. Marco's office felt smaller with 6 people crowded inside. Lena stood near the window, arms crossed defensively, while Marco leaned against his desk. Vinny paced like a caged animal, and 3 of Marco's top men, Tommy, Rafe, and Santos, blocked the door like sentries. Jonathan Pierce from the bank sat uncomfortably in a leather chair, his briefcase clutched on his lap, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. "Explain it to me again," Vinny said, his voice tight. Slowly. Lena took a breath. "My father was Anthony Moretti. He worked as an accountant for the Castellano family until 1998, when he testified against them in exchange for immunity. After that, he rebuilt his life legally. When he died 4 months ago, he left me everything. $87 million in completely clean money. Clean money, Rafe repeated with a harsh laugh. From the Castellanos' accountant. Boss, this is a setup. Has to be. The money's been verified, Pierce interjected nervously. 3 law firms, the IRS, the FBI, they've all examined the estate. Every dollar is accounted for and legally obtained after Mr. Moretti's testimony. And we're just supposed to believe that? Tommy moved closer to Lena, his bulk intimidating. That daddy dearest goes straight, makes millions, and leaves it all to the daughter he abandoned? That she just happens to work here? That she just happens to show up the exact day the bank comes calling? I worked here for 2 years, Lena said, forcing her voice to stay steady. Long before I knew about any inheritance. I found out about the money 2 weeks after Mr. DeSantis fired me.
Convenient timing, Santos Mutered.
Marco had been silent through the entire exchange, watching Lena with an expression she couldn't read. Finally, he spoke. Why didn't you tell me? When you were working here, why didn't you mention your father? Because I hadn't spoken to him since I was 7 years old, Lena said. I didn't even know he was alive until the lawyers contacted me. And honestly, Mr. DeSantis, in 2 years, you never once asked me about my family. You never asked me anything personal at all. The words landed like a slap. Marco's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Here's what I don't get, Vinny said, stopping his pacing to face Lena directly. You've got almost $9 million. You could go anywhere, do anything. But instead, you show up here to bail out the guy who fired you. Nobody does that without an angle. My angle is paying a debt. What debt? Vinny pressed. He fired you. If anything, he owes you. Lena's eyes met Marco's. You saved my brother's life. 18 months ago, outside your gate. Drive-by shooting. You pulled a kid to safety. That kid was Dante Moretti, my little brother. The room went silent. Marco's expression shifted, something flickering across his face. Recognition, maybe, or surprise. The law student, he said quietly. Brown jacket, looked scared out of his mind. That was Dante. He was coming to pick me up for my shift. Lena's voice wavered slightly. You didn't know who he was. You didn't ask for his name or wait for thanks. You just saved him. And then you walked away like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing, Marco said, so quietly only Lena heard. Vinny shook his head. So, you're throwing away $8 million because the boss did one decent thing? Lady, that's the worst business decision I've ever heard. It's not business, Lena replied. It's a life debt. Where I come from, that means something. Where you come from, Rafe said slowly, is the Castellano family's accountant's house. You grew up in that world, even if you didn't know it. For all we know, you're working for whoever's left of that organization. The Castellanos are finished, Pierce said, trying to be helpful. Federal prosecutors dismantled them years ago. Families don't disappear. Tommy cut him off. They scatter, they regroup, they wait. And now Tony Moretti's daughter shows up with millions from their old accountant to save the guy who's been taking their territory for a decade? That stinks of a long game. Lena felt panic rising in her chest. This was spiraling exactly the way Patricia Morrison had warned her it would. I'm not working for anyone. I'm just trying to do the right thing. The right thing, Santos said, is usually the stupid thing in our world. Marco pushed off from the desk, his movement silencing the room. He walked slowly toward Lena, stopping a few feet away. His eyes searched her face, looking for deception, for ulterior motives, for any sign that his men were right to be suspicious. Look at me, he said softly. Lena met his gaze, refusing to flinch. In 2 years, Marco continued, I never looked at you. Not really. You were just the person who cleaned my office, brought coffee, changed sheets. I never asked about your life, your family, your dreams. I treated you like furniture. Sir. And when I thought you'd betrayed me, I threw you out without even letting you explain. No investigation, no benefit of the doubt.
Just.
Out. Something like regret shadowed his face. So now you come back, offering to save everything I have left, and my first instinct is to suspect you again. To assume you're playing some angle, because that's the only thing that makes sense in my world." He was closer now, close enough that Lena could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of years spent trusting no one. "Tell me the truth," Marco said. "Not for them, for me. Why are you really here?" Lena thought about lying, about giving him some easier answer. But Marco DeSantis had built his life on reading people, on detecting deception. He'd see through anything but the raw truth. "Because when I got that inheritance, the first thing I thought was, now I can disappear. Now I can build a life far away from crime and danger and men who see people as assets or threats," she said quietly. "But then I saw the news about the bank coming for your mansion. And I realized that if I walked away, if I let you lose everything when I had the power to stop it, I'd be doing exactly what you did to me, making a choice based on fear and suspicion instead of giving someone a chance." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "You saved my brother without thinking, without calculating the cost. For once in my life, I wanted to do the same. To help someone because it's right, not because it's smart." Marco studied her for a long moment. The room held its collective breath. "Boss," Vinny said warningly. "We can't trust." "Everybody out," Marco interrupted. "What?"
Out. Now.
"Pierce, you too. Wait in the hall." Vinny looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Marco's expression stopped him. One by one, the men filed out, Pierce scurrying after them with obvious relief. The door closed, leaving Marco and Lena alone. "You understand what you're doing?" Marco asked. "The second word gets out about where that money came from, every crew from here to New York is going to think I'm working with Castellano money. My enemies will come for you to get to me. My allies will question my loyalty. You're painting a target on both our backs." "I know. And you're doing it anyway." "Yes." Marco turned away, running a hand through his hair. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. "I don't deserve this. Whatever you think you owe me, I don't deserve it." "Maybe not," Lena agreed. "But Dante deserves to have a sister who honors her debts. And I deserve to be someone who helps when she can, consequences or not." The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Marco turned back. "If we do this, if I accept your help, things are going to get dangerous fast. Are you prepared for that?" Lena thought about her tiny apartment, her quiet life, the safety she was about to abandon. Then she thought about Dante's face that night, alive because of this man's instincts. "I'm prepared," she said. It was a lie. But neither of them called her on it. The bank's regional headquarters downtown looked like a fortress, all steel and glass with security cameras on every corner. Lena sat in a sterile conference room, Marco beside her, while Jonathan Pierce typed frantically on his laptop. Vinny stood by the door, arms crossed, radiating hostility. Pierce had been on the phone for the past 20 minutes with what sounded like increasingly important people. His face had gone from pale to ashen. "I see," he said into the phone. "Yes, I understand. I'll inform them now." He hung up and removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes like a man who'd just received very bad news. "There's a problem," Pierce said. "Of course there is," Vinny muttered. Pierce ignored him, focusing on Lena. "Miss Moretti, the verification team has flagged your payment for additional review. Given the unique circumstances surrounding your father's past employment and the size of the transaction, they're requiring a 48-hour enhanced screening period." 48 hours? Marco's voice was dangerously quiet. "You verified the money was legal. You said we could proceed." "The money is legal," Pierce insisted. "But there are protocols when large sums potentially connected to organized crime, even historically, are being transferred to settle debts owed by someone currently under federal investigation." He looked genuinely apologetic. "It's policy. My hands are tied." "Convenient," Vinny said. "Gives the feds more time to find a way to seize it themselves." Pierce flinched but didn't deny it. "The bank wants to ensure we're not facilitating money laundering or becoming accessories to any ongoing criminal enterprise." It's standard procedure for high-risk transactions. High risk, Lena repeated, her stomach sinking. What does that mean for the mansion? The seizure was supposed to happen tomorrow morning. The seizure is postponed pending resolution of the payment issue. You'll have 48 hours. Pierce started gathering his papers. However, Miss Moretti, there's another complication. Because your funds are now in escrow pending review, you're legally required to remain available for questioning. That means staying within city limits and maintaining contact with our office. She'll stay at a hotel, Marco said immediately. Pierce shook his head. Given the circumstances, the ongoing federal investigation, the security concerns that have already been raised, the bank recommends Miss Moretti remain somewhere secure. Somewhere we can reach her immediately if needed. You're saying she needs to stay at the mansion, Vinny said flatly. I'm saying it would be advisable. Pierce stood, clearly eager to escape. I'll be in touch within 48 hours. Hopefully sooner. He left before anyone could argue further. The drive back to the mansion was tense and silent. Lena stared out the window, watching the city pass by, trying to process what had just happened. She'd expected complications, but not this. Not being trapped inside Marco's world while everyone decided whether her money was clean enough to accept. This is bad, Vinny said as they pulled through the mansion gates. Boss, having her here, it's going to look like we're holding her. Like we forced this payment somehow. What choice do we have?
Marco replied.
We throw her out, the bank gets suspicious. We let her wander around town. She's an easy target for anyone who wants to send me a message. So we're her bodyguards now. Marco didn't answer, but his jaw tightened. Inside the mansion, the staff had cleared out. The huge house felt empty, almost haunted. Marco led Lena through the main foyer. She'd only ever entered through the service entrance before, and up the grand staircase. Second floor, east wing, he said.
Guest suite.
It has its own bathroom and sitting room. You'll be comfortable there. Mr. DeSantis, I don't need. You're staying in the guest suite, he said firmly. Not the servants' quarters. You're not staff anymore. He stopped at a large wooden door and pushed it open, revealing a beautifully appointed room with cream-colored walls and elegant furniture. Nothing like the small, sparse room she'd occasionally used during long shifts. Lena stepped inside, feeling completely out of place. This is too much. It's the least I can do considering you're giving me $8 million, Marco's voice was dry. Your brother, Dante. Does he know you're here? I texted him from the car. He's not happy about it. Smart kid. Marco moved to the window, checking the sight lines to the grounds below. Old habits. Vinny's going to post men around the perimeter tonight. Just a precaution. You think someone's coming? Marco turned to face her. Words already out, Lena. My source at the docks says the Calabrese crew is asking questions. So are the Russians. Everyone wants to know where Tony Moretti's daughter got $9 million and why she's using it to bail me out. What are they saying? That you're either my secret weapon or my biggest liability.
Maybe both, he paused.
There's also talk that some of the old Castellano lieutenants, the ones who scattered after the prosecutions, are sniffing around. They think your father might have hidden money from the family. That you're using it now. Lena's hands trembled slightly. She clasped them together. But it's not. Patricia Morrison verified every dollar. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what people believe. Marco studied her face. You're scared. I'm terrified, Lena admitted. But I'm not leaving. Stubborn. You have no idea. Something almost like a smile crossed Marco's face, gone before Lena could be certain she'd seen it. Get some rest. Lock your door. If you need anything, there's a phone on the nightstand. Press 7 for the kitchen, 8 for security. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Vinny. What about you? Where will you be? Downstairs. Making calls. Trying to figure out who's going to come through that gate first. The bank, the feds, or someone looking to settle old scores. He started to leave, then paused in the doorway. Lena, what you're doing, the risk you're taking, I want you to know I understand the weight of it. Do you? The question came out sharper than she'd intended. Marco was quiet for a moment. My father once told me that the worst thing about this life isn't the violence or the danger. It's that you forget how to accept kindness. You forget that some people do things without angles, without expecting something back. You start seeing generosity as weakness or manipulation, because that's the only thing that makes sense in a world like this. He looked at her directly. You're offering me something I don't know how to accept, but I'm going to try. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you don't regret it. Before Lena could respond, he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. She locked it, as instructed, then sat on the edge of the enormous bed. The room was beautiful, luxurious, and felt like a gilded cage. Through the window, she could see Vinny directing men across the grounds. They moved with military precision, taking positions, checking weapons, preparing for war. Lena pulled out her phone. One text from Dante. If anything happens, call me immediately. I mean it. She typed back. I'm fine. Safe. I'll call tomorrow. Another lie. She wasn't safe. Not even close. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Like fire. Like blood. Lena pulled the curtains closed and tried not to think about what morning might bring. But sleep, when it finally came hours later, was filled with the sound of gunshots and her brother's face as Marco pulled him behind that stone pillar, the moment that had set all of this in motion. The moment that had taught her that Marco DeSantis, despite everything he was, still had something human buried beneath the armor. She just hoped that humanity would be enough to keep them both alive. Lena jerked awake to the sound of breaking glass. For a disoriented moment, she thought she was still dreaming. Then she heard the shouting, men's voices, urgent and sharp, followed by the unmistakable crack of gunfire. She rolled out of bed, her heart hammering. The clock on the nightstand read 2:47 a.m. Through the gap in the curtains, she could see muzzle flashes in the darkness, like deadly fireflies across the mansion grounds. Someone was attacking. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stay in your room. Lock the bathroom door.
Get in the tub. Now. Vinny.
More gunshots, closer now. Lena grabbed her phone and ran for the bathroom, but she'd barely made it 3 steps when her bedroom door exploded inward. She screamed. But it was Marco who burst through, gun in hand, his face hard and focused.
Move. Now.
What's happening? No time, he grabbed her arm, pulling her into the hallway. Smoke was already curling up the main staircase. Below, she could hear breaking furniture, men shouting orders, the steady percussion of gunfire. Marco dragged her in the opposite direction, toward the back stairs. They came through the south perimeter. At least 8 of them, maybe more. Professional crew.
Who?
Does it matter? He shoved her through a service door she'd used countless times during her years as staff. The narrow stairway was dark, lit only by emergency lighting. They're here because of you. Because of that money. Guilt twisted in Lena's stomach, but she didn't have time to process it. They were moving down the stairs, Marco ahead of her, weapon raised. At the bottom, he paused, listening. Voices echoed from the main hall, accented English, speaking rapid fire. Not Marco's men.
Service tunnel, Marco whispered.
My grandfather built it during Prohibition. Goes under the east wing to an exit near the garage. He led her through a narrow corridor she'd never seen before, past the industrial kitchen, and into what looked like a storage room. Marco pushed aside a shelf, revealing a hidden door. Behind it, concrete steps descended into darkness. Down, he ordered. The tunnel was cold and damp, barely wide enough for them to walk single file. Lena could hear her own breathing echoing off the walls, too loud, too panicked. Behind them, the sounds of fighting continued, muffled now, but constant. They'd gone maybe 50 yards when an explosion rocked the tunnel. Dust and debris rained down. Lena stumbled, and Marco caught her, steadying her. They're trying to flush us out, he said grimly. Keep moving. But before they could take another step, Light flooded the tunnel behind them. Flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, and voices shouting in Italian. They'd been followed. Marco pulled Lena into a side alcove, barely more than a recess in the concrete wall. He pressed her against the cold stone, his body shielding hers, exactly like that night with Dante. His gun was up, aimed at the tunnel entrance. "When I move," he whispered, his mouth close to her ear, "you run. Don't stop, don't look back." The tunnel ends at a metal door. Combination is 1-9-4-7. There's a car in the garage with keys in the ignition. You drive straight to the nearest police station. "What about you?" "I'll buy you time." No, Lena's hand gripped his arm. "I didn't save your mansion so you could die in a tunnel protecting me. Lena. We go together or not at all." The flashlight beams were closer now. Lena could see shadows moving along the tunnel walls. 3 men, maybe 4, advancing carefully. Marco's jaw clenched. Then, surprising her, he made a decision. "Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say when I say it." He stepped out of the alcove and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. The tunnel erupted in chaos. Return fire, ricochets screaming off concrete, men shouting. Marco grabbed Lena's hand and pulled her forward, running deeper into the tunnel as bullets chewed up the walls around them. One of the attackers went down. Then another. But more were coming from behind, and Lena could hear additional footsteps ahead of them. They were being boxed in. Here. Marco yanked her sideways into another passage she hadn't seen, this one even narrower. They had to turn sideways to squeeze through. Behind them, angry voices echoed, but the passage was too tight for easy pursuit. They emerged into what looked like an old wine cellar, stone walls, empty racks, the smell of must and age. A single exit at the far end, wooden door reinforced with iron. Marco moved to the door, checking it. Locked from the other side. "Stand back," he said, then fired twice at the lock. The wood splintered. He kicked it open. They stumbled out into the cool night air. They were behind the garage, exactly where Marco had said they'd be. The mansion was lit up like a war zone, flames visible through several windows. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the cops. Marco's car, a black Mercedes, sat exactly where he'd promised. But between them and the vehicle, 3 men appeared from the shadows, weapons raised. They'd been waiting. The leader was a man in his 40s, scarred face, cold eyes. He said something in Italian and Marco's expression went dark. "Castellano crew," he translated for Lena. "They want to know where the rest of Tony Moretti's money is hidden." "There is no other money," Lena said, her voice shaking. "I gave you everything from the estate." The scarred man laughed, then raised his gun, pointing it directly at Lena. Everything seemed to slow down. Lena saw Marco move, saw him stepping between her and the gunman. Again, always again. Heard herself screaming, "No." The gunshot was deafening. But it wasn't the Castellano soldier who fired. Vinny appeared from behind the garage, his shotgun still smoking. The scarred man went down hard. His companions spun toward this new threat, and Marco used the distraction, firing twice. One attacker dropped. The other ran. More of Marco's men poured around the building. Tommy, Santos, others Lena didn't recognize. The Castellano crew was retreating now, outnumbered and outgunned. Vinny jogged over, breathing hard. "South perimeter is secure. These bastards came through the drainage culvert. We didn't see them until they were already inside." "How many?" Marco asked. "We got 6. Another 4 got away." Vinny looked at Lena, his expression complicated. They were asking about her specifically. Wanted to know where she was staying. "They were here for me," Lena said quietly. The guilt she'd felt in the tunnel came rushing back, overwhelming. "This is my fault. This is the life," Marco corrected, his voice rough. "They would have come eventually, with or without you. You just gave them an excuse." Police sirens were getting closer. Fire trucks too, judging by the deeper horns. "We need to move her," Vinny said. "Cops are going to have questions." The feds will be right behind them if they find out about the money situation. Safe house, Marco decided. The one in Lynn. It's off the books, not connected to any of my properties. She'll be safe there until the bank clears the payment. Marco, I can't just, Lena started. You can't stay here, he said firmly. They know you're at the mansion now. They'll come back, and next time they'll bring more men. He met her eyes. I promised I'd keep you safe. Let me do that. Lena looked at the burning mansion, at the bodies being covered with tarps, at the devastation her presence had brought down on this place. The weight of it was crushing. I'm sorry, she whispered. Marco's expression softened, just slightly. You have nothing to apologize for. You tried to help. That's more than most people would do. He opened the Mercedes door. Get in. We're leaving.
Now.
As Lena slid into the passenger seat, she looked back at the mansion one last time. The DeSantis family legacy, 3 generations old, now burning because she'd tried to save it. The road to hell, she thought, is paved with good intentions. She just hoped they'd both survive the journey. The safe house in Lynn was nothing like the mansion. It was a small ranch-style home on a quiet street, the kind of place no one would look twice at. Vinyl siding, chain-link fence, a lawn that needed mowing. Completely unremarkable, which made it perfect for hiding. Inside wasn't much better. Dated furniture, beige walls, the faint smell of disuse. But it was clean, secure, and most importantly, unknown to anyone outside Marco's inner circle. Lena sat at the small kitchen table, wrapped in one of Marco's jackets because she'd left the mansion with nothing but her phone and the clothes on her back. Dawn light was starting to filter through the curtains. She'd been awake for over 24 hours, running on adrenaline and fear. Marco stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low tones to Vinny. He'd been making calls for the past hour, checking on his men, assessing the damage, trying to figure out the next move. Finally, he hung up and turned to face her. 6 of my men injured, none seriously. The mansion's east wing is gutted, but the structure's sound. Fire department got it under control before it spread to the main house. He poured himself coffee from the pot Lena had made. The feds showed up an hour ago. Vinny's handling them. What did he tell them? That rival crews have been testing our defenses, trying to take advantage of my legal troubles. It's close enough to the truth. Marco sat across from her, and for the first time since the attack, he looked tired. Really tired. They'll investigate, but they won't find anything pointing to you. They were asking for me specifically, Lena said. Your men heard them. My men know how to forget things when it's convenient. Lena traced the rim of her coffee mug, not meeting his eyes. How much of the mansion is destroyed? Does it matter? You're still paying off the debt. The bank will consider the payment valid regardless of the building's condition. That's not what I'm asking. Marco was quiet for a moment. My mother's sitting room is gone. The one where she used to read to me when I was a kid. My father's study, where he taught me about the business, about loyalty, about what it means to be a DeSantis. The desk where he died of a heart attack is ash now. His voice was flat, emotionless, but Lena could hear the pain underneath. She'd learned to read Marco's silences over 2 years of working for him. The things he didn't say were always louder than the things he did. I'm sorry, she whispered. Stop apologizing, Marco's voice was sharp. Those rooms were already ghosts. I've been haunting that mansion for years, pretending it still meant something. Maybe burning parts of it down is what needed to happen. You don't mean that. Don't I? He looked at her directly. That house is a monument to everything my family built. All the blood, all the compromises, all the people we hurt to stay on top. My grandfather killed men in that mansion. My father ordered hits from that study. And me? I've made my own choices. Added my own ghost to the walls, he paused. Maybe you didn't save anything worth saving. You saved my brother, Lena said firmly. In front of that mansion. That's worth something. Marco shook his head. That was one moment. One impulse. It doesn't erase everything else. It does to me. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee as the sun rose higher. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked steadily, marking time they didn't have. Finally, Marco spoke again. Why didn't you run? What? In the tunnel. When I told you to run to the police station. You refused, he studied her face.
Why?
Lena thought about how to answer. Because I spent 2 years being invisible to you. Being someone you could dismiss without a second thought. And I'm tired of being that person, someone who runs when things get hard. Running doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart. Maybe. But I didn't come back to be smart. I came back to honor a debt. She met his eyes. And you can't honor a debt by abandoning the person halfway through. Marco's expression shifted, something complicated moving across his face. You're going to get yourself killed. Probably. And you're okay with that? Lena considered the question. Was she okay with dying for this? For him? She barely knew Marco DeSantis beyond his coffee preferences and his tendency to work late into the night. He was a criminal, a man who'd built his life on violence and intimidation. But he was also the man who'd thrown himself between her brother and bullets, who'd shielded her in that tunnel the same way, who sat across from her now, exhausted and vulnerable, trusting her with his truth. My mother used to say that how you live matters less than how you die, Lena said quietly. That in the end, you're judged by whether you ran toward fear or away from it, she smiled sadly. I spent my whole life running away from my father's abandonment, from my mother's death, from anything that might hurt me. But when Dante almost died and I realized how fragile everything is, I promised myself I'd stop running. That's a dangerous promise to make. All the important ones are. Marco stood and walked to the window again, looking out at the quiet suburban street. I shouldn't have fired you. The admission hung in the air between them. I was scared, he continued, still facing away from her. I'd been operating under the assumption that everyone around me was either an asset or a threat. When I saw that painting crooked, when I thought you'd touch my safe, I defaulted to threat. Easier to cut you loose than trust you might have just been doing your job. He turned back. But that's the problem with living the way I live. You forget that most people aren't playing chess. They're just existing, working, trying to get by. And you were one of those people. You dusted a painting, and I destroyed your life over it. Lena's throat was tight. You had reasons to be paranoid. Having reasons doesn't make it right. Marco moved back to the table, but didn't sit. For 2 years, you brought me coffee exactly how I like it. You noticed when I wasn't sleeping well and left extra towels in my bathroom without being asked. You figured out my schedule better than my own assistant. And I never once asked your name. You knew my name. Lena Moretti. I knew it from your employment file, he shook his head. But I never asked who you were, where you came from, what you dreamed about. You were just the woman who cleaned my office.
That was my job.
It was your job. But you were still a person. And I forgot that. Or maybe I never let myself see it in the first place. He finally sat back down, closer this time. The attack last night, when that Castellano soldier pointed his gun at you, all I could think was that if you died, I'd never get the chance to say I was sorry. That you die thinking I was just another monster who used you and threw you away. Lena reached across the table and took his hand. The gesture surprised them both. Marco's hands were rough, scarred from years of violence. But they were also steady, strong. You're not a monster, she said. Monsters don't feel regret. Maybe I'm just good at pretending. You're not that good an actor. Something that might have been a smile touched Marco's face, brief as lightning. Then it was gone, and he was back to being the controlled, careful man she'd worked for. But Lena had seen it, and she understood, finally, why she'd really come back. Not just to honor a debt, but because somewhere beneath all the armor, Marco DeSantis was still capable of being human. And Lena believed that humanity was worth saving, even if it cost her everything. Marco's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression hardening. The bank. They've completed their review. We need to be at their downtown office in 4 hours to finalize the payment. That's good news, right? It means leaving the safe house. Traveling through the city. Making ourselves targets again, he stood. Get some rest. I'll wake you in 3 hours. We'll take back roads, change cars twice. Vinny's arranging security. As he moved toward the door, Lena called after him.
Marco?
He turned. Thank you for protecting me last night. For this, she gestured at the safe house. Marco looked at her for a long moment. Thank me when we're both still alive at the end of this. He left, closing the door behind him. Lena sat alone in the small kitchen, morning light streaming through the windows, and wondered if they'd both live long enough to see how this story ended. The First National Bank headquarters was a gleaming 40-story tower in downtown Boston's financial district. Marco's convoy, 3 cars, 8 men, pulled into the underground parking garage at exactly 1 p.m. Vinny was driving their vehicle, Marco in the passenger seat, Lena in the back. She'd changed into clothes Vinny had brought from somewhere, a simple black dress that fit reasonably well. Professional. Unremarkable. The goal was to blend in. Remember, Marco said as they parked, we go in, sign the papers, verify the transfer, and get out. No more than 30 minutes. What if something goes wrong? Lena asked. Then we improvise. He turned to look at her. You okay? Lena nodded, though her hands were shaking slightly. She clasped them together in her lap. After 2 hours of restless sleep at the safe house, she felt hollowed out, running on nothing but determination and fear. They rode the elevator to the 15th floor in silence. 2 of Marco's men flanked them, Tommy and Santos, both armed, both scanning every face that got on or off. The other guards stayed in the parking garage, watching the exits. Jonathan Pierce met them in a private conference room, his expression professionally neutral. But Lena noticed the way his hands trembled slightly as he arranged documents on the table. Miss Moretti, Mr. DeSantis, Pierce gestured to chairs. Thank you for coming. I apologize for the delay, but I have good news. The enhanced screening has been completed. Your funds are verified as legitimate and cleared for transfer.
Finally, Marco said.
However, Pierce hesitated, and that single word made Lena's stomach drop. There's a complication with the transfer protocol. Due to recent changes in federal banking regulations regarding large estate disbursements, the beneficiary must appear in person at the originating bank to authorize the final transfer. I'm here in person, Lena said. Right now. Not this bank, Miss Moretti. The bank where your father's estate was originally deposited, Citizens Trust in Cambridge. It's a security measure to prevent fraud. You need to physically verify your identity there, provide biometric confirmation, and authorize the transfer in the presence of their estate officer. Marco's jaw tightened. When was this regulation implemented? 3 months ago, Pierce admitted. It's part of the new anti-money laundering framework. I'm sorry. I should have realized it applied in this case. So we have to drive to Cambridge, Vinny said flatly. In the middle of the day, through public streets. I'm afraid so. The estate officer, Miss Chun, is available today at 3 p.m. If you miss that window, the next availability isn't until Monday. Pierce looked apologetic. I understand this is inconvenient. Inconvenient, Marco repeated, his voice dangerous. He stood abruptly, walking to the window. Below, the city sprawled out, thousands of buildings, millions of people, and somewhere in that maze, enemies waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. Lena watched him think, watched him calculate risks and outcomes the way he'd probably done 1,000 times before. Finally, he turned back. We'll do it. Set up the appointment. Pierce nodded and pulled out his phone, stepping into the hallway to make the call. The moment he was gone, Vinny leaned forward. Boss, this is a mistake. Cambridge is across the river. We're talking 20 minutes minimum in traffic. 20 minutes exposed, traveling a predictable route. Every crew in Boston will know where we're going and when. You think I don't know that? Marco's voice was controlled but tight. But what choice do we have? We don't complete this transfer today. The mansion seizure moves forward tomorrow. Everything we're trying to save gets seized anyway. Then let her go alone, Vinny suggested. With 2 guards. You stay here. Keep yourself out of the line of fire. No, Marco's response was immediate, absolute. Marco. I said no, he looked at Lena. She's doing this to help me. The least I can do is make sure she survives the process. Lena felt something shift in her chest at those words. Not gratitude, exactly. Something deeper, more complicated. Pierce returned, looking relieved. All set. Ms. Chen will see you at 3 p.m. Citizens Trust is at 1240 Massachusetts Avenue. Do you know where that is? We'll find it, Marco said curtly. They left the bank 15 minutes later, moving quickly through the underground garage back to their vehicles. Lena noticed the way Marco's men had positioned themselves, always between her and potential threats, always watching. In the car, Vinny pulled up a map on his phone. Route to Cambridge. We can take the Mass Avenue Bridge or go through the tunnel. Tunnel's a kill box if they're waiting, Tommy said from the front seat. Bridge gives us more options. Bridge is more exposed, Santos countered. More traffic, more civilians. If shooting starts. Nobody's shooting, Marco interrupted. We go quiet. 3 civilian cars, spaced apart. Lena rides with me in the middle vehicle. We look like regular people going to the bank. Nothing tactical, nothing obvious. Vinny frowned. That's a lot of faith in them not recognizing us. It's calculated risk. Marco checked his watch. We have 90 minutes. Let's make the call. Do we take this chance, or do we fold? The car went silent. Lena could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on all of them. One wrong choice and people would die. Maybe her. Maybe all of them. I'll go alone, she heard herself say. With one guard. The rest of you stay here. I'm the only one who needs to be there. Absolutely not, Marco said.
Why?
Vinny's right. If you come, you're a target. They want me, want the money, but they want you more. If I go without you, it's safer for everyone. Safer for everyone except you. Marco's eyes locked on hers. You think I'm going to send you into danger alone after what happened last night? After you almost died because of me? I almost died because of choices I made, Lena corrected. This is my inheritance, my risk, my decision. And it's my debt you're paying off, Marco shot back. That makes it my responsibility to protect you. The intensity in his voice surprised them both. Vinny and the others exchanged glances, but said nothing. Lena took a breath, trying to think logically despite her racing heart. What if we split up? I go to Cambridge with guards. You stay here with Vinny, somewhere public, somewhere safe. When I'm done, I call you. We meet somewhere neutral. Marco shook his head. If something goes wrong, if you're taken or hurt, I need to be there. Not hearing about it on the phone 20 minutes later. Why? Lena pressed. Why does it matter so much? Marco was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, almost reluctant. Because you came back when everyone else left. Because you're risking everything to help someone who doesn't deserve it. And because if something happens to you because of me, because of my world, I'll never forgive myself. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Vinny cleared his throat. So we're doing this. All of us. Together. Together, Marco confirmed, still looking at Lena. She nodded slowly. Together. Vinny started the engine. Then we better get moving. Traffic's going to be hell, and we're sitting ducks every minute we're on the road. As they pulled out of the parking garage into the bright afternoon sunlight, Lena caught sight of their reflection in a storefront window. 3 cars traveling in formation, trying to look casual, but moving with unmistakable purpose. She thought about what Marco had said. About responsibility. About not forgiving himself. And she realized that somewhere between the mansion and the safe house, between the tunnel and this moment, they'd stopped being employer and employee, criminal and civilian. They'd become something else entirely. She just wasn't sure what to call it yet. Or if they'd live long enough to figure it out. The appointment at Citizens Trust went smoothly. Too smoothly. Lena provided her identification, biometric scans, signed documents while Ms. Chun, a petite woman in her 60s, guided her through each step with professional efficiency. The transfer was authorized. The money would clear by morning. Marco watched from across the room, tense as a coiled spring, but nothing happened.
No alarms, no ataques, no complications.
That's it? Lena asked as Ms. Chun printed the final confirmation. That's it, the woman confirmed with a warm smile. Congratulations, Miss Moretti. The transfer will be complete by 9 a.m. tomorrow. They were back in the cars by 3:45 p.m., heading south toward the river. Vinny drove, constantly checking mirrors. Tommy and Santos followed in the second car, the third bringing up the rear. Too easy, Vinny muttered. Where were they? Maybe we got lucky, Lena offered, but she didn't believe it. Neither did anyone else. Marco's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression went dark. We didn't get lucky. They were just waiting for the right moment. What is it? Vinny asked. My contact at the docks. Says a crew's been waiting at the old shipping pier off Northern Avenue. Castellano remnants and some Russian contractors. At least a dozen men. That's our route back. Tommy's voice came through the radio. Only direct way to the safe house without adding an hour. Vinny gripped the steering wheel tighter. We can detour. Take the long way. They'll just follow us, Marco said. And the longer we're exposed, the more chances for them to hit us. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then we go through. Fast and hard. Don't give them time to set up properly. Boss, that's suicide. It's strategy. They're expecting us to avoid them or try to sneak through. We do the opposite. We hit them before they're ready. Marco checked his weapon. Tell everyone. Lock and load. This is happening. Lena's heart hammered. Marco. Stay down when it starts, he said, his voice gentler. Get on the floor, stay below the windows. Don't try to help, don't try to be brave. Just survive. The pier district was industrial and abandoned. Warehouses with broken windows, rusted shipping containers stacked like building blocks, cracked pavement sprouting weeds. Perfect ambush territory. They were halfway through when Vinny spotted them. Contact left. 2 vehicles. A black SUV pulled out from behind a container, blocking their path. Another appeared behind them, boxing them in. Men emerged from the warehouses, too many to count, armed with automatic weapons. Punch through.
Marcos Chautit.
Vinny floored it, aiming straight for the lead SUV. The gunfire started, a deafening roar of automatic weapons tearing into their vehicle. The windshield spiderwebbed. Vinny ducked, still driving, as bullets punched through the doors. Lena screamed, dropping to the floor as Marco had ordered. Glass rained down on her. The car swerved violently, then crashed into something with a bone-jarring impact. The lead SUV. Vinny had rammed it, pushing it aside just enough to squeeze through. Behind them, Tommy's car opened fire, providing cover. Lena heard explosions, grenades, or maybe gas tanks. The world was chaos and noise and terror. Stay down, Marco shouted at her, then rolled down his window and returned fire. They made it 50 yards before their car shuddered and veered hard right. Vinny fought the wheel, but the tire was gone, shredded by bullets. They skidded sideways and slammed into a concrete barrier near the waterfront. The impact threw Lena against the seat. Pain exploded in her shoulder, but she barely registered it. Marco was already moving, kicking open his door.
Out.
Move to the pier. Vinny dragged Lena from the car. Her legs felt like rubber, but adrenaline pushed her forward. They ran toward the old fishing pier, wooden planks over black water, offering cover from the abandoned boat slips. Marco covered their retreat, firing controlled bursts. Behind them, Tommy's car had also crashed. Santos and the others were scrambling out, weapons up, returning fire at the advancing attackers. A bullet whined past Lena's head, so close she felt the air displacement. Vinny pushed her down behind a concrete pylon just as the wood where she'd been standing exploded into splinters. How many? Marco demanded, dropping beside them. 15, maybe 20, Santos called from behind an overturned dinghy. We're outnumbered 3-1. Then we make every shot count. Marco's voice was calm, controlled, a man in his element despite the chaos. The attackers advanced in 2 groups, using the shipping containers for cover. Professional tactics. These weren't street thugs. These were soldiers. Lena watched as one of Marco's men, she thought it was Tommy, went down with a cry. Santos dragged him to cover, but Lena could see blood spreading across his chest. "We can't hold this position," Vinny shouted over the gunfire. Marco glanced around, calculating. His eyes locked on a rusty fishing trawler tied to the pier, maybe 30 yards away.
The boat.
"We get to the boat, we can use it as a hard point. Better cover than this." "That's a long 30 yards, boss. You got a better idea?" Vinny didn't.
"On my mark," Marco said.
"Suppressing fire, then we move. Santos, you and Rafe lay down cover. Vinny, you get Lena to that boat." "I'll—" "No," Lena grabbed his arm. "We go together. Like you said." Marco looked at her, and for just a moment, the hardened criminal disappeared, replaced by something almost tender. "Stubborn woman. You have no idea." He actually smiled. "Ready?"
"No."
"Me neither." He turned to his men.
"Now."
Santos and Rafe opened up with everything they had, bullets hammering into the shipping containers, forcing the attackers down. Marco grabbed Lena's hand and ran. They were 5 yards from the boat when Lena saw him, a gunman on top of a container, rifle aimed directly at Marco's back. The angle was perfect. Marco wouldn't see him in time. Lena didn't think. She just moved. She crashed into Marco from the side, throwing them both off balance just as the rifle cracked. The bullet that would have hit Marco's spine whistled past empty air. They hit the pier hard, rolling. Marco's head cracked against wood, stunning him. The gunman was lining up another shot. Lena saw Marco's gun on the planks where he'd dropped it. She grabbed it, heavy, unfamiliar, raised it in shaking hands and pulled the trigger. The recoil shocked her, but the shot went true. The gunman jerked backward and tumbled off the container. Marco stared at her, dazed. "Did you just save your life?" Lena finished breathing hard.
"Yes."
"We're even now." He laughed, an actual laugh, sharp and surprised. Then Vinny was there, hauling them both up, pushing them the last few yards to the boat. They crashed over the railing just as the wood pier erupted in splinters behind them. Inside the trawler's cabin, they had cover, firing ports, and most importantly, a defendable position. The battle continued. Minutes that felt like hours. But Marco's men were fighters, and the attackers, realizing they'd lost the element of surprise, began to retreat. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the cops. The remaining attackers melted away into the warehouse district, leaving behind their dead and wounded. Silence fell, broken only by heavy breathing and the lap of water against the pier. Marco checked Lena over frantically. "Are you hurt?" "My shoulder. From the crash." "I'm okay." She was shaking, coming down from the adrenaline. "Marco, I shot someone." "You saved my life." He pulled her close, and Lena realized he was shaking too. "That was the bravest, most foolish thing I've ever seen." "You've done it for me twice," she whispered against his chest. "That's different. I'm used to this." "Nobody should be used to this." He didn't argue. The sirens were closer now. Marco pulled back, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes intense. "The cops are coming. We need a story. A good 1 inch." "The truth," Lena said. "We were ambushed by unknown assailants. We defended ourselves." "That simple?" "That's simple." As police lights flashed in the distance, Lena looked at the carnage around them. Bullet casings, blood, broken glass. She'd shot a man, saved Marco's life, crossed a line she'd never thought she'd cross. And somehow, she didn't regret it. Because Marco DeSantis was alive. And so was she. That had to be enough. The police interrogation lasted 6 hours. Lena sat in a gray room at Boston PD headquarters, exhausted and aching, repeating the same story to 3 different detectives. Yes, they'd been ambushed. No, she didn't know who the attackers were. Yes, she'd fired a weapon in self-defense. No, she hadn't intended to kill anyone. The detective across from her, A tired-looking woman named Rodriguez studied her with sharp eyes. Miss Moretti, you're asking me to believe you had no idea this attack was coming. I knew it was possible, Lena said carefully. Mr. DeSantis warned me there might be danger, but I didn't know when or where. And why were you with Marco DeSantis in the first place? You're not part of his organization. I was his housekeeper for 2 years. Recently, I came into an inheritance and decided to help him settle a debt with the bank. Lena met the detective's gaze steadily. That's all. I'm not involved in his business. An $8 million inheritance. Rodriguez leaned back in her chair. That's quite a windfall for a housekeeper. My father left it to me. It's been verified as legal by 3 law firms and the FBI. Lena's voice hardened. I'm a victim here, detective. Not a criminal. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, then nodded. The FBI's confirmed your story. The attackers were known associates of the old Castellano organization, mercenaries hired to intercept what they thought was hidden cartel money. She closed her folder. You're free to go, but stay available. The DA might have questions. Lena walked out into the precinct lobby on shaking legs. Marco was there, talking quietly with his lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Feldman. Vinny stood nearby, sporting a bandage on his arm but otherwise intact. Marco saw her and immediately crossed the room. You okay? Tired.
Sore.
But okay, she managed a weak smile. You? Same, he glanced at Feldman. They're not charging either of us. Self-defense ruling. The feds are treating it as an organized crime matter, not our problem anymore. What about the payment? Marco's expression shifted, something like relief crossing his face. It cleared this morning at 9 a.m. Jonathan Pierce called an hour ago. The bank's removing the seizure order. The mansion is legally secure. Lena felt her knees go weak. We did it. You did it, Marco corrected. I just tried not to get you killed in the process. You failed at that, she said with a tired laugh. I got shot at, crashed into barriers, and had to shoot someone. Not exactly a safe experience. No, Marco agreed quietly. It wasn't. And I'm sorry for that. Feldman approached, briefcase in hand. Mr. DeSantis, we should go. The press is gathering outside. They've gotten wind of the attack and the bank situation. Best to avoid cameras right now. They left through a side exit, avoiding the reporters clustering at the front steps. The morning sun was blindingly bright after hours in windowless interrogation rooms. Lena squinted, disoriented. A black car waited at the curb, not one of the shot-up vehicles from yesterday, but something new. Vinny held the door open. Where to? He asked Marco. Marco looked at Lena. Your apartment? Your brother's probably worried sick. Dante's at the mansion, Vinny said. Showed up this morning asking questions. Tommy's keeping him company. Lena's heart jumped. Is he okay?
He's fine.
Pissed off, but fine. Vinny's expression was almost amused. Kid's got spirit. Threatened to sue us for endangering his sister. That sounds like Dante, Lena said, torn between affection and exasperation. We should go to the mansion. I need to see him. The drive took 30 minutes through morning traffic. Lena watched the city pass by, normal people doing normal things, completely unaware that yesterday she'd been in a gunfight on a shipping pier. The disconnect was surreal. When they pulled through the mansion gates, Lena saw the damage in daylight for the first time. The east wing was blackened and partially collapsed, police tape still marking it off. But the main structure stood intact, proud and defiant despite the scars. Dante was on the front steps the moment their car stopped. He ran down, yanked the door open, and pulled Lena into a crushing hug. Are you insane? He demanded. Do you have any idea what I've been through? I saw the news, shootout at the pier, multiple casualties, and then nothing. No call, no text, nothing for 6 hours. I'm sorry, Lena said, hugging him back. My phone died, and then the police. Don't ever do that to me again, Dante's voice cracked. I thought I'd lost you.
I'm okay.
I promise, she pulled back, checking him over. What are you doing here? Making sure Marco DeSantis understands that if anything happens to you, he'll answer to me, Dante glared at Marco, who'd stepped out of the car. Law degree or not? Marco held up his hands. Your sister's the toughest person I know. She saved my life yesterday. Dante blinked. What? She shot a sniper who had me dead to rights, Marco continued. Tackled me out of the line of fire, grabbed my gun, and took him down. I'd be dead if not for her. Dante stared at his sister. You shot someone? In self-defense, Lena said quickly. It was him or Marco. And you chose Marco. Dante's voice was flat, processing. Then he turned to Marco. She chose to save you. You understand what that means? What she's risked for you. I do, Marco said quietly. Better than you know. Then you better make it worth it. Dante's expression was fierce, protective. Because she's all I have left. And if your world gets her killed. It won't, Marco interrupted. I give you my word. The word of a criminal? The word of a man who owes his life to your sister. Which is worth more than you might think. The two men stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Dante nodded, accepting if not trusting. Inside the mansion, the damage was worse than Lena had imagined. The hallways smelled of smoke and water from the fire department's efforts. Furniture was covered with soot. But people were already working, contractors assessing the structure, cleaning crews removing debris. Marco led them to his office, miraculously untouched by the fire. He poured 3 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter, handing one to Dante and one to Lena. To survival, he said, raising his glass. To stupid decisions that somehow worked out, Dante added with a weak smile. To debts paid, Lena finished. They drank. The whiskey burned going down, warming Lena from the inside. Marco set down his glass. Lena, I need to ask you something. What? What happens now? The debt's settled. The mansion's safe. You're free to walk away, take what's left of your inheritance, and build the life you wanted, he paused. But I'm hoping you won't. Lena's heart skipped. What are you saying? I'm saying I need someone I can trust. Someone who sees me as more than just a criminal or an asset. Someone who's proven they'll stand with me when everything's falling apart. Marco's voice was steady, but his eyes held uncertainty. I'm offering you a position. Not as a housekeeper, as my house manager and financial overseer. Someone with authority, with a real voice in how things run here. You want to hire her back? Dante said incredulously. After everything that just happened? I want to give her the position she should have had from the beginning, Marco corrected. Someone who helps me make decisions, manage the legitimate side of my assets, maybe even helps me figure out how to build something cleaner than what my family left me. He looked at Lena directly. You showed me I'm capable of trust. Now, I'm asking you to help me figure out what to do with that. Lena was quiet, considering. She thought about her apartment in Dorchester, the quiet life she'd planned. Then she thought about the past 3 days, the fear and the danger, yes, but also the moments when she'd felt truly alive, truly purposeful. I'll need my own office, she said finally, and full transparency on the finances.
No secrets.
Marco's face split into a genuine smile. Done. And Dante gets to visit whenever he wants. No questions asked. Agreed. And we never speak of this as you hiring me back. This is a partnership. I'm not your employee. I'm your ally. Ally, Marco repeated, extending his hand. I can live with that. Lena shook his hand, sealing the agreement. Dante groaned. You're both insane. Probably, Lena agreed. But I'm tired of playing it safe. As they stood in Marco's office, drinking whiskey in the damaged mansion, Lena realized something had fundamentally changed. She'd come here to pay a debt. Instead, she'd found a purpose. And maybe, just maybe, she'd found where she belonged. 2 weeks later, Lena stood in what used to be the guest suite but was now her office, reviewing spreadsheets on her laptop. Through the window, she could see construction crews working on the East Wing, rebuilding what the fire had destroyed. The sound of hammers and power tools had become the mansion's new soundtrack. A knock at the door. Come in, she called without looking up. Marco entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He set one on her desk, made exactly how she liked it, she noticed with amusement. The man who'd never asked her name for 2 years now knew her coffee order by heart. The bank sent final confirmation, he said, settling into the chair across from her desk. The mansion's title is clean.
No liens, no pending seizures.
It's officially ours, he caught himself.
Mine.
It's officially mine. Ours is fine, Lena said, closing her laptop. I did put $8 million into it. About that, Marco pulled out a folder. I had Feldman draw up paperwork. You're now listed as a partial owner of the property, proportional to your investment. If anything happens to me, your stake transfers to you directly. Lena stared at him. Marco, I didn't do this for ownership. I know. But you deserve protection. Legal protection. This way, nobody can question your right to be here or your authority over the finances. He pushed the folder toward her. It's the right thing to do. She opened it, scanning the legal documents. Everything was official, notarized, legitimate. Her name, Lena Moretti, listed as co-owner of the DeSantis estate. Your father must be rolling in his grave, she said quietly. My father made a lot of mistakes. I'm trying not to repeat them. Marco's voice was steady. He never trusted anyone outside the family. It made him powerful, but also isolated. Paranoid.
I don't want to end up like that.
Lena signed the documents, then slid them back across the desk. So what now? We're business partners in a partially burned mansion with a reputation for attracting gunfights. Marco actually laughed. When you put it that way, it sounds terrible. It is terrible, but it's also Lena's search for the word.
Honest.
Real. No pretending everything's perfect. A comfortable silence fell between them. Outside, one of the construction workers called out instructions in Spanish. Life continuing, rebuilding, moving forward. Dante came by yesterday, Marco said. Did he tell you? He mentioned it. Said you two talked. He wanted to make sure I understood the conditions of your employment. Marco's expression was wry. Kid's got a future as a lawyer. He negotiated harder than most of my business associates. What did he say? That if you ever feel unsafe, if I ever cross a line, if this arrangement stops being beneficial to you, he'll personally destroy me. Legally and thoroughly, Marco smiled. I believe him. You should. Dante doesn't make empty threats. Neither do I. Which is why I told him the truth, that you're not here because I'm forcing you or manipulating you. You're here because you chose to be. And you're free to leave whenever you want. Lena studied his face. And if I did leave? If I walked out tomorrow? Marco was quiet for a moment. I'd be disappointed. But I'd understand. He met her eyes. You've already given me more than I had any right to ask for. Your money, your courage, almost your life. I won't trap you here with guilt or obligation. Good, Lena said. Because I'm not staying out of guilt. Then why are you staying? It was the question she'd been asking herself for 2 weeks. Why had she signed those papers? Why had she moved her things from her apartment into the mansion? Why had she accepted this strange, new life? Because for the first time since my mother died, I feel like I'm doing something that matters, Lena said slowly. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm building something. And yes, it's complicated and dangerous and probably insane. But it's mine. Our choice, our risk, our chance to make something better than what came before. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the grounds. You asked me once why I came back. The truth is, I came back because I believed you were capable of being more than what this world made you. And I still believe that. Marco joined her at the window. What if you're wrong? What if I can't change? Then we'll figure it out together. Lena turned to face him. I'm not expecting you to become a saint, Marco.
I just want you to try.
To build something legitimate alongside the rest. To prove that the man who saved my brother without thinking is still in there somewhere. He is, Marco said quietly. You helped me remember that. Down below, Vinny appeared on the lawn, talking with Tommy and Santos. The 3 men had become Lena's unofficial security detail, a fact that still felt surreal. Yesterday, Vinny had actually asked her opinion on a business decision. Tommy had brought her coffee without being asked. Santos had helped her move furniture in her office. Marco's men, slowly learning to see her as more than the boss's strange new partner. "They're accepting you," Marco observed, following her gaze. "Faster than I expected." They saw what happened at the pier. Hard to dismiss someone who shoots a sniper to save the boss. True. Marco was quiet for a moment. "Lena, I need you to understand something. This life, my world, it's always going to have danger. I'm trying to build legitimate operations, trying to move away from the worst of it, but there will always be enemies. People who want what I have or want revenge for past grievances." "I know. And you're still staying?" "I'm still staying," she smiled. "Besides, I've already been shot at, survived a mansion attack, and killed someone. I think I've earned my place here." "You've earned more than that." Marco's expression was serious. "You've earned my trust, my respect, and something I didn't think I was still capable of, my loyalty. Not because you work for me, but because you chose to stand with me when everyone else was running away." The moment stretched between them, heavy with meaning. They'd been through fire together, literally and figuratively. They'd saved each other's lives. They'd built something new from the ashes of what came before. "So," Lena said, breaking the silence, "what's next?" Marco pulled out his phone, showing her a document. "Feldman found 3 properties we can convert to legitimate businesses. A restaurant, an apartment complex, and a warehouse that could become storage facilities. All clean, all legal, all potential income streams that don't involve anything criminal." "You're serious about this?" "I'm serious about proving you weren't wrong about me." He looked at her directly. "About proving I'm worth the $8 million and the risk you took." Lena took the phone, reviewing the properties. Numbers and addresses and possibilities. A future being built one careful decision at a time. "Then let's get to work," she said. As they walked back to her desk together, partners in this strange new venture, Lena caught their reflection in the window. Marco DeSantis, the Mafia boss trying to build something better. And Lena Moretti, the woman who'd come back to save a mansion and ended up saving something far more valuable. His humanity. Her purpose. Their unexpected alliance. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, casting light across the damaged mansion. The scars were still visible. Burn marks on the walls, boarded windows, construction scaffolding. But beneath the damage, the structure stood strong. Just like them. Lena sat down at her desk, Marco taking the chair across from her. They had work to do, finances to review, decisions to make, a future to build. She'd come here 3 weeks ago as a woman paying a debt. She was staying as a woman who'd found her place in the world. And that made all the difference. The end.